My name's Rob, and I've worked with Combined Knowledge, or at Combined Knowledge now, for over 7 years. And I basically spend all my time working with customers to help them use SharePoint and Office 365 and a whole load of kind of related technologies that are kind of around it in the Microsoft stack, as well as a whole load of Nintex stuff as well. Okay. So as I'm working with customers, one of the things that one of the things that kind of frustrates me is that they switch off all the social stuff straight away. Yep, so we have a load of customers. They buy SharePoint, they buy the premium licenses, the most expensive money can buy, and then they just switch off social. So one of the ideas of today's session is really just to focus on social, all the things that we get with social, so kind of what's happened since around about 2007 in SharePoint and kind of what's happened a bit more recently, going all the way up towards Yammer, which is still a bit of a contentious subject, so I'll give you my 2 cents worth on that one as well and see if you agree or disagree. We're not going to fall out today. So if you've got different opinions, that's fine. Some of us will be right, some of you will be wrong, but we'll try not to fall out. Is that okay? Yeah, nice and friendly. Everyone in the right session? Okay. Okay, right. So again, my name's Rob. Just to confirm on here, I've put my email address and I've put a Twitter address as well. I guess with social, I could have put my Yammer and everything else, but I sort of decided to stop somewhere. So if we sort of run out of time a little bit at the end of the session, and if you want to ask questions, you can get me on my email address or on the Twitter. Okay, so where to begin? Before we actually go through and do the demonstrations of how to be social, where the buttons are and when you should press them, we should probably just work out, well, what exactly is social for? Anyone that was around last night will know exactly what Steve and Zoe think social is. So actually within SharePoint it's not as exciting as that. So social within SharePoint for me comes down to kind of 4 different areas, and these are areas that haven't really changed. These have kind of been around since 2007 for me. So the idea is I've got some sort of information, so whether it's an announcement or whether it's a question, I've got some sort of information, and what I want to be able to do is get that information out there. Yep. So I want it to be simple and fast. So we start to think kind of Twitter, Facebook, like these sort of short messages. Yeah, so that sort of starts to feel social to me. I want it to be concise, so yeah, definitely really short. I don't want people to be able to write like whole Word documents. We've already got document libraries for that, so that's a separate thing. The other thing is I want the information to be transparent, or the technique to be transparent. So what I mean by that is I want hopefully everyone in the organisation to see it, rather than an email where I sort of send you a question and you reply and I think, that's amazing, I can't believe you've told me that. And then it's still just the two of us that know something. Yep. So when we're looking through the sort of social stack and all the different tools, this is kind of what I'm going to measure it up against. Is it simple? Is it fast? Is it concise? Is it transparent? And if it is, that to me is good social then. Okay, there's going to be other things going on, but that's kind of the simple of it. Before we kind of go through and start the demos, there's one thing I want to get out of the way. There's normally someone in these types of sessions sat frowning at me. I can't see who the person is yet. But someone normally comes in to try and say, social will never work. Or, is it you today? It's not you. She's not here today. Did she have a lie-in this morning? Okay, so it's all right. She's not here today. The one that normally frowns at me, she's not here. It's good that you knew who she was there. That was good. Okay. So before we get in and before someone cuts in halfway through and says, oh, who will police it? Or how are we going to stop people doing things they shouldn't do? Well, I think the same as any tool, what we really want to do with social is we want to try and trust people a little bit. What we want to be able to do is switch on the social tools, explain to them what they should use it for, so some guidance ideally, or if you go a bit further, it could be kind of governance, but ideally guidance when we switch this stuff on, so people know what they should use it for and what they shouldn't use it for. Yeah? For a lot of you, the social tools will actually fall under your IT policy as well. So if people have already filled in an IT policy that says you shouldn't do X, Y, and Z of inappropriate things on your IT systems, SharePoint and the social topics probably would fall under that as well. If not, you might want to review your policy and just make sure that it does. In terms of the policing of this stuff, when people go on to social within SharePoint and within Office 365, everything has their name against it. So if you post a blog, or if you make a comment, or if you go into Yammer and you send someone a question or some praise, it has your name against it everywhere. And if people click on your name, it tells them your phone number and who your manager is and which office you're based in. Yep. So that should be a big deterrent. If people were thinking, oh, I'm going to have some fun today, I'm going to put some stuff that's inappropriate up here on SharePoint, it's going to track back pretty quickly to them. So in most organizations, rather than it being a person's job to police this stuff, we would hope that the individuals will do a lot of the policing themselves. And that's part of understanding it. It's not anonymous. Okay? The other way of looking at it is, oh, people are worried. What if people say what they think? What if someone is not very happy with the food in the canteen and they go to the canteen discussion area and they say, I'm not very keen on the food? Or something stronger. Well, hopefully, again, that's good. You know, maybe it's a dialogue. Maybe that means we could talk to them, and maybe that means the canteen food's not very good. And taking that as a silly example, but if we think about project management methodologies in a company, maybe people are not very happy with them and they want to talk about it. Wouldn't it be great if there's some way they could do that within the system? So I'm going to try and say, and I do live in a slightly ideal world, I'm going to try and say that the ability to communicate and for it to be transparent is a positive thing. Yep. So no frowns later on when I show you this stuff and you go, oh, what if someone says this? Yeah, well, hopefully it's positive. A silly one here, I was on a dog walk through the day with some of my friends, and I sort of always tell people, oh, switch all the systems on, it'll be okay. But this is kind of the opposite. Every time you see something, there's a chance to kind of misbehave. So we saw this lovely seesaw in the woods and we thought, great, this will be fun. Within 3 or 4 minutes, we were trying to fire each other up in the air. So pretty much any tool or anything you see out there could be misused, right? But hopefully most of us are good people. So I didn't fire him very far in the air. It was fine. He wasn't properly injured. Okay, so just to bring this back to the real world then, so this is a way, again, for a while now, I've talked about understanding SharePoint Social, and again, we are going to update this and look at some of the newest stuff as well, but just 3 different ways of thinking for individuals within your business, how might they use social and what their benefits might be. The first one we're going to review and we're going to do some demonstrations on is that they need an answer, so they've got some sort of question. They're going to use a whole variety of social techniques, which we're going to list out in a moment, and we'll tell you which versions of SharePoint they're available with. So that's going to be a big starting point. We're then going to go the other way, and this was based on some guys that I met a while ago. They'd got a blog site on the internet, and on that blog they'd got thousands of followers. And they were really frustrated within their own business that they had 2 followers in SharePoint. So there's not that many. So he kind of asked me straight after one of the training sessions, how do I get my followers up? What can I do? How can I become better known within the social systems within SharePoint? So we spent a little time with that guy and we put together a list of how to become famous within SharePoint. So we'll take a look at that, and again, we'll update that to try and include the newest techniques. And then finally, the last one, this one's a little bit of fun, and I'll try and be brave and do a bit of a demo from my iPhone. So if you could see me fiddling with my phone before, I was just connecting it up to my laptop. So the idea with this one is I don't have time to use SharePoint. People sometimes say to me, I don't have time to log into the stupid website, which I mean SharePoint generally when they say the stupid website. So quite often they are more comfortable using the apps on their phones or their mobile devices. So we're going to see there's a couple of different apps that can interact with the SharePoint Social and the Yammer. Yeah, and we're going to be brave and we'll try and demo that from Office 365 via an iPhone over a 4G dongle. So if that all works, that will be a small miracle, but it'll be kind of cool if it does. So we'll cross our fingers for that one. I'm going to leave that towards the end, so if it doesn't work, I'll just quietly sneak away. Okay, so breaking it back down then. So first thing is I need an answer, so let's have a look. So I'm in SharePoint, and from a social point of view, the first thing that I could do is I could go in and search. I'm going to actually jump straight in and demo this. I'm going to demo this one in SharePoint 2013 because the social components in SharePoint 2013 and also in Office 365 were really much improved over the 2010. So let me give you a quick example. So I've got an environment that we use for a lot of our training courses that we demonstrate from. So if I come into here and I've got some sort of a question, what I could do is I could come in and I could use the search component within here to ask a question. To find answers to a question. So what I could do in here is I could come in, I could say perhaps I'm looking for a person to help me. So they're a good social object. I could say I'm looking for someone to help me with Excel spreadsheets because I do love Excel, but it can be quite a frustrating program sometimes. So I could go ahead and run a quick search. And based on people's profile information, it's going to come back and show me people that have skills around Excel. So if I have a look in here, I've actually encouraged all my demo users to go ahead and put in profile pictures so we get a good experience. The reason that most of these people are appearing here is that they're filled in somewhere in their profile that they know about Excel. So, you know, it could be actually, it could be that Excel's in their job title, so they might be a good person to know. If they're the Excel macro manager, they might be a good person to talk to. But it could just be that in their Ask Me About field, they've actually filled in that Excel's one of the things that they're happy to talk about. Again, people always say, well, what if they put in that they've got all these different degrees and they can speak Japanese and they can't? Well, when someone clicks on it and says, oh, I see that you speak Japanese, and they go, oh, no, it's just, I thought it was funny. And again, hopefully they would remove it, and then, you know, that they would realize it was not funny. It was never going to be funny. Maybe a different language would have been funnier. So again, yes, people could fill in things that are not real, but the only other way you could look at it is, well, what if we try and redesign it, customize it, and make it so that people have to fill in, so what if we make it so that HR have to fill in all the information? At that point, it becomes a massive HR process to keep everything up to date. So by default within here, things like the ask me about and most of the profile data, people can change it themselves. And again, I'm going to go out there on a limb and say, hopefully that's a positive thing. If I've just learnt a new skill, or if I'm part of a project, I could update my profile, and then everyone could know about that. Okay, so for now, I was trying to answer this question of, just go back. I need an answer. So rather than looking for documents or pages, I actually thought I'd go and search for people. If, when I did that demo, you thought, oh, I don't recognize that, that looks a bit different. If you're thinking that, oh, I don't have the drop down there that Rob used to get to people, if you don't have that, that might well mean that your search environment's not set up correctly. By default, if you just have a site on its own and you've not configured anything else, you normally just get to search the current site, and that's about it. When you get your search environment and your SharePoint environment set up correctly, which doesn't take very long, you just need to go through a few steps, particularly to create something called a search site, an enterprise search site. If you have that, you then get these extra drop-downs, and that starts to group things together a bit more nicely. Right, so I can see everyone's pretty excited about that, but I'm afraid I'm going to have to move on. Okay, next one then, kind of an old one, discussion boards. So rather than me going and posting in a board, it might just be that I actually want to search and find information from there. So this is kind of old news, I guess. Let me just give you a quick example. So let's say I want to find out some information about London. Within here, I could actually specifically say I'm looking for conversations. So again, since 2013, these kind of headings have been a bit nicer now. It's easier to find these conversations. And these conversations I could follow back, and I could get back to these discussions. The discussions themselves, though, that have been around since 2007, there was a lot of restrictions with them. So you could go in and post questions and answers. The sort of thing that it didn't have in there, though, was the ability to go through and say that something was a reputation. What I mean by that is that, you know, if you go into a forum online nowadays and you answer loads of questions, you get like a number of points. And people can distinguish that you're someone that's been really involved in that area, and you get all these points, whether they're Microsoft points or Google points or whatever else you've got out there. With a discussion board, it didn't really recognize people, so you could be really putting in loads of work and answering and asking questions, and you couldn't actually easily see, well, who in that community is really kind of getting involved, which is a useful thing to see. So the discussion boards, although they've been around for a long time, back in 2007, it's really just questions and answers. It didn't have any of the nice things like the reputation settings. The good news is, as we come further down the list, we will find there's a newer version of those now, and it does have things like the reputation settings and some other nice bits as well. Some of you might think, oh, the reputation settings in the scoreboard is just a gimmick. And I've not really found that to be the case. If you go onto the forums online, whether it's forums about Microsoft technology or cars or football, you will find that there are people that are in there, and part of what drives them to be in there answering questions is those scoreboards that say these are the 5 people that have contributed the most content. Is anyone a forum addict? Yeah. What's your topic of choice? Is it something you can tell us about? Politics, is it? Oh, okay. So there's always something to argue about in politics. It's great, isn't it? There's always new people to moan about. It's good. Okay, so that's a good one. That's good. Yeah. So I'm lucky. I'm off of my forum addiction at the moment. So last year I was pretty addicted, but I'm off of it for now. So we'll see a new version of that in a moment. Also, in terms of getting information, pages and wikis, so we could look through different pages and wikis. They're a great way of finding information. So again, I could do that through my search. Something else I could do is go through and look at different blog posts. So I'll give you a demo of a blog in the next section, but the idea is that if we've got people within our organizations that are subject matter experts in different fields, so whether they're researchers or they're in the legal team or they're in finance or they're in sales or they're project managers, they should all be kind of experts in different things. So they all know their part of the business, right? So wouldn't it be great if some of them took a little bit of time to actually share some of that information? So if they've got something that they constantly get asked about and they're almost annoyed about answering the same question every day, they might think, well, I don't have access to the full company intranet. I can't write a page on there to explain it because internal comms won't let me. It's not really appropriate. But for most of us, we do have blogs since 2007. How many people have switched all their blogs off? No? Well, normally everyone's like, yeah, we switch them off, yeah. And you say, why? And they say, oh, we're not sure. So it's good if you do have those blogs that hopefully we could tell people, right, if you're a subject matter expert, you could spend a very short amount of time, you could use Microsoft Word, you could create blog posts, and that information again becomes searchable. So when I search for a question or a topic, as well as being able to find people and conversations, I can also find these blogs as well. Okay, so where we've actually gone in and we've championed that as part of the rollout of SharePoint, we've actually found up to 25% of the users have actually gone out and they've continued to create blog posts. So up to a quarter of the users in some organizations will actually blog. I can't remember what the statistic was, but it was over 2 years, I think over a quarter of them had blogged more than 4 times. So we don't want them blogging every day. It's not going to become a full-time thing. But someone might go on a training course, learn some keyboard shortcuts, and that could become a blog post. You know, someone might be getting the same question all the time. They could put that in a blog post and refer people to it. You might have thought that before. Why is it that people in the SharePoint community create these blog posts and put them online? It's because they get annoyed with being asked the same question again and again. So they think, I'm just going to write this down once and people can just go there and get it. And they are very generous people as well. Okay, as we move further down the line, we get into the newer technologies. So we've got what's now described as a community site, which is the new version of this discussion board. Remember, we sort of complained the discussion board didn't have things like reputation settings, which was something we kind of expect nowadays online. Since 2013, we've got community sites. So you can post questions and answers. It looks kind of similar when you first get started, but it's much richer. As well as a community site, which I'll show you an example of in a moment, we also get something called a community portal. So this is basically a hierarchy of objects. So a community site might be a site where you might ask questions about Microsoft Excel. Yep, got a topic. I might make another community site and say this is where you ask questions about project management. Yep, so I've got loads of these community sites that are all over the environment, not just in one site collection. If you've got a community portal, it summarizes all of your community sites. So it says these are the different communities that are available in your business, which is great. For those of you that have been around for a while, it sounds a bit like the old sites directory we used to have back in SharePoint 2007 that Microsoft took off of us now. Yep. So it's a sites directory, but it only summarizes the community sites. Yep. Question?
Would you say the community site has superseded the discussion?
Yeah, I would say so in pretty much every way now. I think a lot of the old stuff's still in there, just in case people have created code around it and developed it. You know, if people have put it in as part of a bigger process. But yeah, in the most part, these community sites really just are way better. I'll show you some examples of that as well. So, for example, in the community sites, we can use things like hashtags and app mentions, as well as these reputation scores. So, again, when you see it, you're just going to go, oh, this is the way it should have always worked. It's how things have worked online for a few years now. So that's what we like. Okay, so let's go and take a look. I can see everyone, again, is pretty excited about that, so I don't want to hold you back much more. Let's have a look. So if I jump back up to here, and if I head into my community site, and again, I'm doing this in SharePoint 2013 at the moment, but if you're in Office 365, you get basically the exact same object. Yeah, so here in a community site, it looks a little bit nicer. There's some kind of web parts here that are displaying the information to me. This is a demo that I put together a while ago, so the dates are not going to be kind of up to date for today, but if I have a quick look, we can see over here, it's summarizing what's happening in this community site, and it is a site rather than a list. The old discussion list was just a list that you could put into a site, whereas the community site is a whole site, so it's a bigger object because there's more going on, there's more configuration. This is the sort of thing that I'm benefiting from, so things like top contributors. Yep. Which again, if you've never been addicted to a forum before, you'll think, oh, being on a scoreboard, that can't be something that I would log in early at work for just to do half an hour off. But believe me, it is. It's something that's quite motivating for a lot of people. If I have a quick look in here, I'm not going to do too much typing, but if I have a quick look, got some of these old ones in here. If I go in and take a look, so someone's posted a question. I could have searched and found that question. Can include all sorts of different content in here, so we can include photographs, links, all sorts of different things. It's full rich text. When someone comes in, they could choose to like it. They could also choose to reply. So that's kind of a common thing with all the good social. People can interact. It's not just a publication. You can like it, you can comment. Just to show you a couple of things we could do in here that we didn't used to be able to do in the old discussion lists, I could come in and do an at mention. So if there's this conversation going on and I think, oh, I know Brett would love to get involved in this conversation, so I could go ahead and at mention Brett. Brett, what do you think? So I could send that off. What's going to happen behind the scenes is that it's going to email Brett. So it's going to translate that back to Brett's email address. It's going to give Brett an email saying, hey, you've been mentioned over in this conversation. Click here to go and take a look. Yeah, so it's just an easy way of just telling someone about a conversation that's going on.
Is there a cap on mentions?
Yeah, I can't remember what the limit was, but do you remember what the number was?
In normal mentions and newsfeeds, it's 3. I was wondering.
Yeah. Yeah, as far as I know, the limit's still the same, as far as I know. Yeah, you're right. There's some of these things that are still kind of frustrating in terms of the way they work, but yeah, so the question there was how many at mentions can we do, and for some technical reason I think it's 3 at the moment, so we could at mention Steve and Brett and Todd, but we couldn't put a whole load of other people in there.
So it can't be a group?
I don't think it will let me do it as a group in there because it wants to resolve to an individual address. Yeah, so. Okay, so I'm not going to come back to this one again, so just while we are here, remember this is the newer community site from 2013. Just whilst I am here, a couple of other things to point out that we have here that we didn't have in the old discussion list. One of the things we've got here is these reputation settings. You know, we said people are getting points for doing different things. So as the owner of this site, I see this web part on the right with a whole load of settings in. So the more interesting ones are down here. So here I can control how many points people get when they do things. So if someone was to post a question, they get 10 points. If someone was to reply, they get 10. So I can influence all these different numbers. At the moment as well, one down here, it says, look, if someone has a question that's marked as a best reply, then that gets them 100 points. So basically, if we see a series of answers, I can go in and click on the little dots in there and say, mark this as a best reply. That means when people come in and look at that conversation, they'll see the question and the best reply right there with it, rather than what sometimes happens in older forums. You see a question and loads of answers, and you have to go through like all 6 pages until you get to the one that actually is right. So again, just being able to mark things as a best answer just by clicking on it, and that then appearing right up underneath the question. Some of these things just think, oh, that should have always worked like that. But no, back in the old discussion list, we didn't have all those nice things. I'd need to double check. So yeah, I think you're right. It makes sense, doesn't it? I should have said at the start of this that there is custom permissions in here to make some of this stuff work, so people can't edit each other's conversations, and some of those things are in there already. Yep. Yep. That's right. Yeah. When you make the new community site, you'll get these slightly customized permissions. Yep. So I'm not going to go any further into that one because we're going to run out of time otherwise. Very briefly, one other thing that fits in here, which is different, is you can go through in these community sites, you can create something called badges. So again, imagine if you're part of a large organization and you're in this community site and you're looking around, you might well find that someone posts a response and you might think, oh, I don't really know who they are. So perhaps you could click on them and see their profile, but it might be nice if perhaps right here next to their question or their response, rather than these bars that just tells you how many responses they've made, it might be nice there if it said they're a member of the support team, or if they're part of the finance department, if there's some sort of wording or labeling that was significant, more important than the little blue bars perhaps. So that's what a badge is. So very briefly, because the interface is a bit quirky with this one, so if I go in and create a badge, just to have a quick go. So there's expert and professional, so let's say we want to make it a bit more official for the members of the support team so that we can actually see when they've replied to things. Yeah, so we can distinguish official responses from kind of general public within the organization. So we can make a badge. And if I head back up, so within here there is a button to assign a badge. That's all kind of nice, even if first time around, it's not too bad. The only thing that's a little bit strange in here is the interface. So if I was to select my user Alex that I'm logged in as for now, there's a tab up at the top here, which is a moderation tab, and that's where you go to give the badge. So that's the only bit that's a bit quirky. Just look out for that tab at the top. So let's just apply that badge. So it does look to me like there's quite a lot of effort gone into creating this for 2013, and I think we're getting a much better experience. So here, for example, we can see Alex Fox had responded to something, and we can see now it says they're a member of the support team. If you don't like those badges, you might find when we get to Yammer in a few minutes' time that you prefer the badges in there. Yammer's quite picture-orientated, so it's a little bit more colourful, I guess is another way of saying that. Right. Okay, so a couple more things just to finish this one off. As well as going through and using the community sites that we just played with, we can also use what we might describe as a microblog or a newsfeed. So some of the functionality that we saw we could use in a full-blown community site, yeah, things like @mentioning Brett and perhaps using hashtags that we'll demo in a moment. We can actually go and do those things on the face of a team site. So I could be in a particular team or project site. Right within there, we could start conversations. I think what's kind of nice with that is with the community site, it was good. We liked the functionality, but it was really removed from the team sites that we were perhaps in earlier. So you've got team sites for document management and then community sites for having a social, and that kind of separation doesn't really fit that well anymore. What we really would like to do is see things kind of merged together. We don't want people to think, I'm now going to do some social. We want it to be almost accidental so that those things are happening without them really trying to. So what I'll do is I'll do a brief example of that. Is anyone using these news feeds yet at the minute? Anyone using much of the news feeds? Yeah, a little bit of a mix. Okay, some people, and some people switching them off. No one's admitting to switching stuff off now. Maybe it's because I was hard on people earlier. I sort of warned you that I wasn't keen on that. So a lot of people switch this stuff off again, which is kind of a bit of a shame. So within here, I'm in a sales site, which is just a team site. On the face of it, without doing any customization, I get a news feed. And it has, again, a lot of those same qualities that we said before. So I could go in and I could @mention Brett, which would email him. Also within here, I could use hashtags. So if I wanted to say that there was some sort of sales news, what I might do is go #sales. These tags are actually getting stored in a central database behind the scenes. So as soon as I've tagged a conversation or a news feed as being #sales, the next time anyone else in our environment goes in and they start to make a post and they go #sales, it will offer them #sales as a choice. Yeah. Then when someone goes into search and they say, I'm looking for anything that's #sales related, they'll get all of those together. So because I'm the first one to go #sales in this environment, it didn't offer me any choices. The second person, or when I go and do it again later on, will get offered a drop-down list. And that's using managed metadata. So there's a managed metadata service that does that.
Do you predefine some of it? That you expect people to potentially use?
So that it's available.
Yeah.
In the interface, it's very restrictive. There's hardly anything you can do. If you go into the main managed metadata service, you can do loads of stuff. It's great. If you go into the system-defined bit, which is where these appear, these social ones, it's really, really restrictive. Because you asked so nicely, let's just have a really quick look. So if I go to settings, if this doesn't work, you're going to get a lot of blame here. If I go into settings, site settings, and if I have a look in term store management, so again, some of you might have been aware of that. It's been around for a little while. Chris did a cool demo of that a couple of years ago. It's still on the website, right, that one?
Oh,
yeah. So if people are interested in this term store stuff, this is a bit of a side note for this session, but for some things it's like a really primary object. If people are interested in this on the Combined Knowledge website, you can find there is a video called, in the knowledge base there's a video called Order Out of Chaos, because Chris is quite dramatic like that. And so it's Chris's session from a couple of years ago where he talked through all the buttons in here basically, because there's a whole load of those. So that's an hour session, that's for free. So if I have a look in here in system, and I start having a look around in here. So some of them have not appeared in here yet, but my other one will appear in there when I've actually posted it, because I've not pressed post yet. That was a bit of a fail. But if I have a look, if I go click, oh, I can go new. So I can go new in there. So I'm the owner of that service. So it might well be I'm allowed to do that because I own that. So I'd go in and do that. What I was thinking is when I look in here, there's hardly any options. In that system area, there's only a couple of things I can do. If I was in the user-defined part of the service, I'll get a big old menu with loads of stuff. So that's why I was thinking, my instinct was, I'm probably not going to do it. So that's cool. So I could load those up, or I could, I guess, if I didn't want to get so technical, I could just go to a news feed, type in a load of tags and press post, and then just delete them. And then that would work as well. The only option we have when we're in that same area. So you just want them to use a kind of a predefined set. The only option we have is when an item has been added. How does it phrase it? Let me just check the wording of this. So we can go through and we could deprecate a hashtag. So that should mean it stays in the database, but people can't post with it anymore. I'll have to double check it, but the only thing when I used that previously was the user then gets a message which is not very intuitive when they're not allowed to do it. So they still type the hashtag in because they can still physically type it. But when they go to post, they got a message which didn't really that clearly tell them, this is not a word you should be using. But it did stop them from posting. Yep, that's good. This is fun, isn't it? Who knew social could be fun? It's so relaxing. Right, okay. Okay, so some of that functionality that we'd seen in the community sites, we're able to do it in the news feeds as well, so that's good. The news feeds is a feature as well, so perhaps if you have a site and you're thinking, oh, on the home page I don't seem to have one of those news feed boxes, it might well be that you just need to go into your site settings and into your site features, and you can switch on the news feed. Yep. So again, in some companies they're switching them off for now. Partly, sometimes people do that because they already have another equivalent. You don't want to have too many things that are all exactly the same. You can see already as we work through this list, there's overlap. So when people are trying to find some information, they could go to people, they could go to one of these old discussion lists. If there's stuff there, they could go to the community sites. So within my SharePoint 2013 environment, I've still got all this stuff. Nothing's ever really been taken away from me. Yeah, doesn't mean I should still use it all, but I've still got a heck of a lot of stuff. Not so much just for SharePoint, this last one, but particularly for Office 365. So OCS, which became Link, which is now becoming Skype for Business. Is everyone keeping up with the names? So these were the instant messaging products. Yep. So, so kind of current wording as it will be now will be Skype for Business. This, having just gone through a rollout for about 400 different users in a large organization, Skype was really key to help with the rollout of SharePoint. Yep. So what we were able to do is, for the first time, the users actually had what was Link, or what would now be Skype as of a couple of weeks ago, on their local machines. If someone was trying to log into something like their Outlook for the first time after their upgrade, after their migration to the cloud, and it wasn't working for them, we were able to actually use Link so that the IT support desk could actually get to their machine, see what they were doing, and even take control of their machine. So without having to use any special help desk software, just by having what for them was Link at the time, they were able to initiate this support process. So that was great for them. What was kind of cool about Link, and I still need to play with it more in Skype because that's still quite a new thing at the moment for us, right? What was cool within Link is when you launch Link, there's only about like 4 buttons when you start a meeting. Do you want to just chat? Do you want to chat with video and audio? Do you want to share your screen? When you're sharing your screen, do you want to let someone take control of it? So they were able to just kind of escalate through those methods. So they could start a chat and say it's not working, and maybe they could fix it on the server and say try again. If that didn't work, they could say share your screen. If that didn't work, they could say, well, let me take control of it. And actually, because there's only like 4 buttons, the users were able to take to it really quickly. And one day I was sat having lunch with one of the support team because they knew it was a rollout day and they were going live with a lot of people. They took their laptop and they had it with them, and they answered 3 queries during their lunch break without it being a big deal at all. Yeah, so they obviously wouldn't normally do that, but because it was a go live day, they made themselves available. Their Link status was available all day. They never went offline. So that was nice. People were pretty chuffed. They'd ask a question, get an answer straight away. Didn't need to pick up the phone. So they definitely got a lot of answers, and some of them were quite technical answers, which was good. Right, jumping over some of those. Okay, the last thing I've got on there, just in terms of asking questions and the social side of that, when I did the search earlier on, I searched for people right at the start of the session. When I searched for people, I searched for Excel, I think was what I searched for, and we found people that had Excel in their profile. So I should probably just go and have a quick look at their profiles. I'm going to talk about it a bit more in the next section, but let's just see where the profiles are at least. So for me, in this version, and this is something that's changed a little bit recently again, in this version, if I go up to the top here, I have my username. I'm logged on as this user called Alex Fox. I can get down into this About Me. In Office 365 now, you don't have Alex Fox anymore. You have a photograph now, so you click on your photograph instead. So some of those things have moved around a little bit. Basically, click on your user menu, whether it's a word or a picture or whatever it is. If I have a look in there, I can go into About Me. Could have searched for myself as well. just to get my searches up so the system thinks I'm kind of popular. But when you do that, it knows that you've searched for yourself. So within here, sure enough, I could go ahead and edit that now. And it's all these details in here. So again, the reason I could find other people was because they'd taken a little bit of time to go in and fill in things like that. Ask me about. Yeah, so ask me about. And in here, this is also a central set of words. So again, in here, if I could say ask me about sales. As I start to type in sales, it's just off the bottom there, but it started to list the choices available, and that's automatically happening. So just because someone else has filled in their profile and they've put sales in, it's saying, oh yeah, I've got that word, I can let you select that. And again, in here I could say, I know literally nothing about football, but I could say, ask me about football. And again, it's not going to stop me doing it, even though no one else has ever put football in and I've not got a clue about football at all. It will still let me do it. Okay, so that goes again into that managed metadata service. So it's going to be in that central database. So that's farm-wide, so it's not separated by department or site collection or any of those normal barriers, which is great. So that managed metadata service is really working for us without us really having to do much. So very briefly, just whilst we're here, because I'm going to mention this from the other point of view a little bit later on again. So if I have a look, contact information, I could fill in things like office location, could be useful. For office location, it's actually giving me the little kind of picker icon there, so I can go in. So again, this has all been generated based on what other people have filled in. Working on it. Just thinking I've not seen any working on it messages in this demo yet today. So for no good reason, it's taken absolutely ages. There we go. So again, the things that are in there are based on what other people have filled in. And they could have just typed and picked it from the list, but. And then the last thing in there that I'm interested in is just to go in, and if I wanted to kind of influence my kind of social interactions, what I can do is come into my profile, and I can go into these ... and I'll find this newsfeed settings. So, you know, before we said that if someone mentions you, you'll get an email. Imagine if you are so popular in the business that people are like mentioning you 20 times a day. So you're getting all these different emails about all these conversations, and at some point you just think, I don't care. So what you could do is within your profile, you could go in and say, if someone mentions me, don't tell me. You could still go and look at a view within your newsfeed and see who's mentioned me today. You can go and look at it at your convenience, but you don't have to get all these emails. Has anyone got that problem? They're too popular at work? No, just me. Okay. So if I go in, what I mean by too popular at work is people constantly phone me and say, Rob, can you help me with this? Yeah. So we don't go out after work, it's just during work. Okay, so within here, again, very briefly, you can play around with this when you get back, can't you? But very briefly, in here, for example, it lists out all the things that would cause me to get an email. And this is using kind of the default SharePoint. So at the moment, none of this is Yammer yet. We've got sort of slightly different window for that, but this is using the defaults. So there's potentially quite a lot of things that would cause me to get an email to begin with. Some of the community site stuff, people mentioning me, people replying to a conversation that I started. So they're all actually quite good by default. It's just if it could get a bit overwhelming. Yep.
Might be a silly question, but if you had a newsfeed on like a relatively closed site, like a project site or something, you mentioned someone who wasn't in the permissions of that site, and they get a link, obviously, they just get the access denied.
Yeah, I think by default, it's not going to give them access. It's I guess if you wanted to go more down that route, then you'd need to, if you're in 2013, you'd need to be going share. Okay. So you'd hit the share button that we talked about.
So send them a link and they would just get the access.
Yeah, basically they wouldn't be able to get in. That's right, like the old email a link. Yep. So it could be quite annoying for them. Someone's mentioned you. You can't follow it. Right, the good news is, because we've covered so many of those things, we're actually getting towards the end of the objects. I'm still going to talk about some of these objects in a different way, and we still need to talk about Yammer, but we've seen most of them. So in terms of getting the answer to a question, I think we've seen all the main objects that I'd kind of look around, the people, those sorts of things. The next thing we said from a selfish point of view that I might want to do with all the social tools within SharePoint is I want to become famous. Yep, so I've updated my slide for this year. We've got some people that have become famous in the last year or so, and some people where fame's not necessarily been good to them this year. So some of these objects we can just skip through now, can't we, because we've seen them. So very briefly, if I'm in the business and I want to become famous, first thing I should do is probably fill in my profile, including my picture and including my skills and including the Ask Me About. So when people search, I'm going to come up in that search. If I don't fill in my skills and my other things, I'm just not going to appear in the search results unless they search for my name. Yep, so that's people that already know me, so it's not really helping with me becoming more famous. Another thing you can do, it's a bit of a cheat, is follow other people. Because if you go in and you search for someone, let's try this. So if I go back, let's just cheat, let's go back to the top. And let's say I'm searching for people. And let's say, again, I'm searching for help still with Excel. See if I can find someone that I've not followed already in this environment. So I'm going to go through, I'm going to find someone with search, I'm going to look at their profile, I'm going to choose to follow them. And one of the reasons I might do that quite craftily is that it's going to tell them that I followed them and give them a chance to follow me back. So let's have a quick look. So if I go into one of these, hopefully one or two of them I've not followed already, should be a couple. Well, I don't think so, because I think stalking, I'm not an expert, I think stalking, I think for stalking there has to be shadows involved, you have to be more hidden. This is in the open, so I don't know if there's a different word for that. So here, for example, I'm able to go through and follow, for example, here, so I could say follow, and that basically is going to email them. Yeah, so I think that's above board, it's telling them that I'm following them. It is quite funny that it says, when you come into here, stop following this person, because that does read as a bit of a police message. So I have done that when I was first playing with this thing. Why is it saying stop following them? Oh, that's the reverse of following, okay. So from a kind of joking point of view, but actually genuinely, if I follow people, I'm likely to get more follows back. It's going to tell them about me. You know, they might never have heard of me before. I found someone, I think they look interesting. Maybe they've got a skill or they can speak a language that I'm interested in, whatever it is. They're in a department that I'm going to try and work in next year. So if I follow them, it'll tell them and they'll get a link to look at my profile and they get an opportunity to follow me right from there. Also, it means now that this has become like an electronic business card for me, so I can get back to this person's details really easily. So just as a quick example, if I go into my news feed, which again is this SharePoint 2013 news feed, we've got this I'm following. So I'm not going to follow everything that you can follow today, but I've followed some people. I've just followed one extra person there, which was Jackie, and it becomes like this little electronic business cards. Yep, so if I found someone and followed them, I can always get back to them from here. I could always search for them again, but it's like on the internet, you search for something and find it dead easy, and you want it again a second time, you'll never find it. So following is like favourites. It's like a favourite mechanism in the way we described it there. It does other things as well, but that's a nice thing. It also means that people that I've followed, when they do significant things, so when they change their job title or when they choose to follow other people, so that sort of the people I'm following has chosen to follow a new person, so they're creating a bigger network there. It'll tell me in here, so if Jackie was active and she was doing some of those things, I'd start to see that appearing in my newsfeed. And again, the idea is it doesn't feel like a big hassle, so I searched and found someone, I might have phoned them to ask them a question, and whilst I did, I followed them as well. So it's all nice, quick processes, yeah.
If that person that you're following puts a blog post?
Yeah, it will tell me. Yeah, blog post is one of the default ones, yeah. And if I double check, you know these, if I go back to edit, the list of things that will appear on my newsfeed, if I go back to my profile, back to edit, back to the dots, back to the newsfeed settings, which is really easy to find. In here, these are kind of the activities. So the top bit was the stuff that gives you an email, and this bottom tick boxes is stuff that's going to appear on your newsfeed. So in here, I think one of these is, let's have a look, yeah. So one of them is new blog post, yeah.
So if somebody...
So someone you're following makes a blog post.
If you like the blog post that they put on, you can follow them because you know.
That's right, and everything maps back to their profile. So whenever you see, if you're in a document library and you see modified by, created by columns, who's modified, who's created, you click on that person's name, you're at their profile page. Yeah, and from there you can follow them or unfollow them or whatever else you need to do. And again, there won't be many buttons. People go, oh, I'm going to do all the social stuff, you know. To go in and edit my profile, you know, click on my picture and edit. To view someone else, I just use the search mechanisms. So yeah, I think there's not a lot of things to tell people. So just a few variations. Today we've kind of gone overboard with this. We're showing you all the choices. You wouldn't normally use everything. Okay, right, so just because I'm a little bit wary of the time now, I'm going to jump on again. It's good that everyone's excited still, keeping the momentum going. So these perhaps are more obvious, as well as crafty ways of trying to get more follows. You could just do good work and share it, so people can look at it, and then they'll want to know you, of course. So when you upload things to SharePoint, make sure you upload it rather than one of your colleagues, so it has your name against it. When people see, again, you've modified it, you've created it, they can click on you, they can get to your profile. Definitely, if you get the opportunity, put yourself down to be a site owner. So that is a privilege, and it's very empowering rather than being just a visitor or a member of a site. If you're the owner of the site, you can promote your content and you can format it however you want. It's a very much positive thing. It's also good to go through and tag and like and follow other people's content, and again, a lot of that will mean that they become aware of you. If someone's put a blog post up and you thought it was useful, even if you don't really have anything to say, just put that was very useful, thank you, send. Yep. So that often motivates people to make a second blog post or a third post, and then they become aware of you. Again, we've seen that in loads of businesses that we've worked with. People that were kind of unknown in the business have become known by almost everyone in the whole business just through things like the blog posts. Yep. So people put a little bit of effort in, and it's made quite a big difference for them. We saw some people that initially were not part of the SharePoint team and they really wanted to be, so they created some blog posts around SharePoint, and then eventually they got what they wished for, which was to be part of the SharePoint team. Whether they regretted that afterwards, I don't know, but the blog post definitely played a part in that. I'm going to go in and just have a quick look at these blogs. So for anyone that's not seen it, I just want to show you how easy it can be. You know, all this stuff's designed to be easy. So, so here I am back in my profile. And over on the left here, for example, I could go into blogs. So this would be a personal blog. By default, at the moment, everyone gets one of these things. It's been around since 2007. I think actually this might be building my blog as it's going in there, so it might just take a second. I'm going to just hold on just to have a quick look. Okay, so I have a blog here. So I could blog in there, and by default, everyone has visibility of that. So if they're searching, they could see it, or I could send them a link. Also, though, something if you're not keen on the idea of letting everyone have a blog and kind of just go in their own way, what you might say is within some departments where they perhaps offer services within the business, so they want to be able to tell people what they're doing and kind of give case studies of how they can help different departments. What I could do in here is go into one of the sites, and within the site, underneath it, I could create a blog site. So here, as an example, in the sales area, I've created a sales blog. So just to give you a quick idea, I've thrown in some different bits. I've got some bullet points, some links, some pictures. Changed the background on that one, but not really that significant. The other thing I wanted to show you here is that if I wanted to create a new blog post, it'd be very easy. I come into a blog, either the blog on my kind of news feed, which is mine, or a blog that I've got owner access to or contributor access to over in an existing site. So I could create a post. You know what? Just the same as everything in SharePoint, it's basically filling a form. So, you know, not a big challenge. It is rich text in the body, so the blog post that we just saw a moment ago with the picture of a train and some of those bullet points, I did that in here, so I could put a picture in, those sorts of things. As soon as I want to do something that's going to look a bit prettier, which I guess could be quite important in a blog post, what I should probably be doing instead is choosing this thing here to launch the blogging app. So I always think that sounds very grand. I can remember being a bit scared of that the first time I pressed it. I didn't know what was going to happen. Did anyone guess what happened? Has anyone done that before? The blogging app, it's going to download something really cool, right? It might be Dreamweaver, or goodness knows what's going to happen, right? So let's try it. So if I launch the blogging app, quite often what happens is nothing. If I then look down at the bottom of the screen and click on Word, basically the blogging app is Word. For some reason let's try that again. No, it's going. I was just a bit rushed there. So for some reason what happens is you go to launch the blogging app, and Word for some reason fails to kind of stand up and say, yeah, I'm ready. So Word will stay at the bottom of the screen there. It doesn't seem to kind of open properly. So what you do is just click on Word at the bottom of the screen, then it will come up and say, oh, I'm trying to establish a relationship here between Word and the blog. And it really isn't technical. Again, all I'd need to do is go OK, OK, OK for anything it's going to question me on here. So I'm just going to OK all this stuff, because otherwise it won't let me do it. And again, I'm just running out of time a little bit, but in here, very briefly, I'm not going to get too drawn into this, because there's a couple of other things that I think are kind of cooler than this, believe it or not. So I'm going to go ahead, create that post. I'm going to publish it. You can see the save button's become a publish button. So Word's going to translate that, send it over to the blog site. And if I refresh the page in there, let's have a quick look. So we can see that's it, the blog's up there. And again, the main reason I would have used Word is normally for diagrams and images, so I get the really good functionality in there to resize things. Oh, so you get the proper spell check in Word and all the nice things, yeah, good point, good point. And I actually have published some of these up to the internet. I did have a blog for it, no one ever read it, I think, so I didn't really bother anymore on the online one. But it's a bit sad, isn't it? Poured my heart there with the blog and no one read the thing. Or they definitely didn't reply. If they would have just replied, I would have kept going. So with the blog, I have done it where there's multiple images and tables, and it actually, all created in Word, and when you publish it, it pretty much always looks good. Yeah, so it's a good experience. I know we joke a bit that it's Word, but actually Word does make for a good blogging app. You know what? I think when you've established the connection, you can. I think the first time you go, you need to go launch, and then it sets it up. But then I think after that, you could then go into Word. So you could bring up like an existing Word document, and you could publish to the blog. But I think the first time you have to go this way. Yeah, otherwise you'd have to go and copy the address and bring it in, and it would be more of a pain. We've also seen what we're calling here the microblogs, which was the little news feeds on the site home pages. So we've seen that. And we've also seen the community sites. We said by contributing to those with the new ones, you're going to be there in the reputation scores, you can have a little badge, all those nice things. So the very last demo, just before we kind of come to the end of the session, was just for these people that want to maybe use social, but they're still not that keen on SharePoint. Yep, so we do have some of that. They like social, but not SharePoint. So one of the things we might encourage them to do is use mobile devices to make use of the social components. Yep. So they could use, whether it be the SharePoint newsfeed or whether it be the Yammer newsfeed. Yep. So a quick example, and I'll do a demo from my mobile in a moment if it will behave. So at the moment, if I have SharePoint 2013 by default, I get the SharePoint newsfeed, which is the one that I've kind of focused on today. The reason I've focused on that is that that's the one most people have and most people use at the moment. Just to give you an idea, Microsoft have been telling everyone for a while now that the news feeds, the kind of standard SharePoint 2013 news feeds, are not going to be developed anymore. So we're not going to see them get any better. They're not really being worked on. What is being developed now, kind of as a priority, is the Yammer version of that. Yep. So for a while it's been a conflict. We've had these SharePoint 2013 news feeds and these Yammer news feeds, and they kind of, to begin with, did very similar things. But Microsoft is saying now, although you could switch between them, perhaps particularly in Office 365, you have to make a choice. You're going to either use the normal news feeds or you're going to use the Yammer news feeds. So perhaps the final thing that's going to help us make this choice, if we're new to 365, for example, or we're new to SharePoint and we want to use the latest technology, Microsoft are making it clear Yammer is what we should be using. At the moment, I still can't really say that's definitely the way forward. Yeah, but in the longer term, we can expect that the news feeds are going to sort of fade away, and that the Yammer is what we're going to end up with. Yeah, so that's really the longer picture, and I can't see that changing. Microsoft have been pretty clear on that. They have a roadmap, and so things have been improving. So again, the newsfeed stuff not changed at all for ages. In Yammer, there was announcements even earlier this week of new functionality that's coming out. So that's definitely the way things are heading. So what I'm going to do is, just to give you an idea of that, I'm going to go ahead and see if my phone will connect. And I'm just going to have a quick look. In fact, I'll do this in two parts. So let me jump to Office 365, and I'll probably make this the last demo of the day. So I'm going to jump into Office 365. Here I'm in a OneDrive. I'm just going to show you something that's kind of cool, that's been around for a little while, but a lot of people are not really aware of yet through Yammer. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in here and make a brand new Word document. I'm then going to start a Yammer conversation whilst I'm in the Word document. So this goes to what we said before about the idea of the documents and the social stuff being more closely integrated. Rather than being in Word or being in a community site, we want to kind of have everything all at once. So again, this demo at the moment is going to be in Office 365, but we hope at some point we'll get more of this functionality on premises as well. And again, it's going to be up to Microsoft how much of this stuff they let us do in our on-premises environment, right? But in 365, it's there already. It's been there for quite a while, actually. So let's just do a quick test in here. So let's say, let's just say last day is our document. And let's just say we want to have some content in there. So I'll make it fairly boring just to save a bit of time. So if I then go ahead and click on the Yammer bar, I can actually come in here, and if I click in the box at the top, it says, what are you working on? And it's going to start a new conversation thread around that document. Okay. I must confess, I have had to log in twice to do this. So I've had to log into Office 365, and then also I've had to log into Yammer and tell it again my username and password. So it wasn't that slick the first time, but I've ticked, of course, for it to remember my password, and now it's actually a pretty good experience. So let's just do this in here. So let's just declare it. I'm going to declare it a good last day. I'm going to put nearly done, and I'm going to mention one of my colleagues who's with us today. So we've got Chris in the room. So that kind of app mention, it's the same sort of thing. You see what we could do in the newsfeed in SharePoint, I can do that in Yammer as well. So it's very similar, very similar. So that's that. So I could go ahead and I could post that. And that's gone out to the social stuff now. So whilst I'm in here working on my Word document, I'll be able to see this conversation happening. Also, at the same time, and again, I know we're just pushing the time now, so just do this fairly quickly. I'm going to jump onto this screen sharing, see if it will behave for my phone. What it should do is, in a couple of seconds, it should pop up. There we go. So what I've got here, this happens to be an iPhone, but most of these apps are available on a whole variety of devices by now. What I've got on my iPhone here is I've got the Yammer app and the Newsfeed app. And again, they're very similar. So yes, for now, you could continue to use the Newsfeed app and use the kind of SharePoint integrated stuff that's there by default. But Microsoft are encouraging us more and more to move into the Yammer app, because that's the one they're developing, that's the one that's going to get better. That's the one that's going to be supported by more devices as we go further down the line. So just to give you an example, if I go into the SharePoint app, you can see here I'm able to post, I'm able to view information, I might be able to reply to things. I can see a whole variety of content. So that was the newsfeed one, the Microsoft one. If I go and take a quick look in the Yammer app, so the document that I just created on my laptop 30 seconds ago and click to have a conversation within Yammer, that document's now visible through my Yammer feed on my iPhone. Chris hopefully has gone. He's not said anything naughty, have you, Chris? No. Oh, needs some work. That's pretty normal feedback from Chris, actually. He could do better. It's like a school teacher, right? So again, on my phone, I'd switched off the notifications so it didn't beep at me. But within here, I can see, sure enough, at the top, it's telling me there's a notification. If I have a quick look. Yeah, in the ribbon in 365, it's also trying to tell me about these new things that are going on. So it's trying to bring up this social stuff. So again, for me, for a long time, it's been kind of hard to get convinced about this Yammer stuff being better. But now that we're seeing things like this, it makes more sense to me. So just with the normal SharePoint newsfeed, it won't be there alongside Word and Excel. With the Yammer stuff, it's there. So we're actually getting improved functionality. And the gap between those two, the built-in and the Yammer, is just going to get bigger and bigger. Yeah, as time goes on. Okay, right, let's get rid of that before my phone rings or anything. There we go, got away with that, excellent. So let's just jump back in just to do the sign off. Just to confirm, if anyone's not seen Yammer before, Yammer always lives online. So whether you have it as part of Office 365 or whether you have it as like a hybrid with your on-premises environment. Yep. So that's one thing to consider with Yammer. If you've got to the point where you're saying, oh no, we can't host anything in the cloud, we have to host it all internally, that's going to mean for now and, well, for the foreseeable future, you won't be able to use Yammer. Yeah, yeah. So everything's local, you've gone down that route, and at the moment, that's just kind of how everything looks like it's going to be. So, yep, yeah. Yeah, and we still see that with a lot of people now. Yeah, so we made that security decision. So that's a bit of a shame. So there's a slight question mark there as to whether could we use Yammer even though Microsoft are telling us to. So there's a slight conflict there. So that's kind of how things are, and that's how they're going to stay for now. Just to confirm, Yammer's improving. So more and more it makes sense to me. A while ago it didn't, and more Yammer makes sense to me now as it's getting better. Also, just not to be too excited about Yammer, here we said it's improving. Here I'm going to say it's changing. So there is a roadmap of what's going on in Yammer. A couple of weeks ago there was an announcement that some of the components that you can currently use to take content from Yammer and show it in SharePoint are going to be switched off. Yep, so there are blogs about that from Microsoft that are out there that explain some of why they're doing that. But basically what's happened is they've created these components, these web parts, which is how we normally show information within SharePoint, and they've now said, no, those web parts are not the preferred way of doing things. So anyone that's used those web parts has until these dates to remove those web parts and use what's now recommended as the new technique, something called embedding, which is a slightly more technical process. Yep, so this is something to watch out for. This is something that when we use any of these cloud-based services, we just have to be aware of. You know, Microsoft at any point could change their mind on these things, and hopefully, normally the improvements are good. So, in summary, we'll let you go now. Summary: lots of choices. Please try and tell people to use it. Don't just let your organisation switch off all the social. We think it's good. And again, I put my email address up and contact details earlier on. But if you want to get me on Twitter, you can. Bless you. You can get me on @SPRob. And I guess if there's any more questions, what I'll do is I'll take them to the side, because I think the next speaker will be in a while to take over. So thanks for joining me today. Thank you.